Tonight's episode of Punching Up was pre-recorded, and so I wanted to come back and take a second to talk about what happened in Minnesota today. You should be able to send your children to school without worrying about them getting shot. This is a reality that exists primarily and mostly in the United States. And it happens so frequently that we just keep going on about our day and assume that that's just how life has to be. But it doesn't. It's not the reality for the vast majority of countries out there. So if we want to be truly exceptional, if we want America to be great, maybe parents should be able to use their energy to care for and help their children evolve, as opposed to using their energy worried about the fact that their kids might not come home from school. If you vote for politicians who put policies into place that protect their money, but don't protect the children of America, don't ask yourself why there are declining birth rates. Okay? So, like I said, tonight's show was pre-recorded, so you're going to see a different energy from the show itself. But please understand that I'm pissed off. No parent should have to fear sending their kid to school. No parent should lose their child at school to gun violence. It's absolutely unacceptable. We need to put people into office who understand that and who care more about the safety of America's children than the safety of their bank account. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Punching Up. I am your host, Maya May, and today at the gym, someone from England gave me condolences for America. And I was like, wait, no, condolences is what you do when democracy is dead, but it's not dead. It's still alive and kicking. We might have a dictator, but we don't have a dictatorship. There is a difference. The people are still fighting. Districts are still being flipped. Shout out to Iowa for bringing that home for us. And so I think it's important to put things in perspective and understand that we are not consenting to any of this that's going on. We do not live in a dictatorship. This is still a democracy, and we have to continue to affirm that day in and day out. That being said, when we look at what's going on in DC and what might be headed to New York and Chicago, it's feeling a little martial law-y. Okay, it's feeling a little like, oh, he's trying to get away with whatever he wants to. And so to talk about that, I was like, hey, why don't we talk to attorneys who are in the cities that he's targeting next, New York City and Chicago. And they're not just any attorneys, they're fun and entertaining attorneys, because that's what we do at Punching Up. We make fighting back against fascism fun, I think. I hope. So yeah, I want to bring in Eliza Orlins, who you might have seen on The Amazing Race and also apparently on Survivor, and we're all trying to survive right now. And Paul Farver, who is the host of a bunch of really great shows and podcasts in Chicago, a comedian and an attorney. What's up, guys? Welcome to Punching Up.
Great to be here with you.
Likewise, yeah, super fun. Recovered attorney. I don't practice anymore. So
you don't practice anymore? Okay, we'll have to talk about why, because I feel like we right now I'm like, I wish I'd gone to law school. I actually said to a friend, I was like, is there like a mini course that we can take to at least help people out in immigration court? I feel big regret on my part. Why did you stop practicing?
Well, first off, I feel like a lot of people think they are lawyers now. Thanks to a lot of talking heads on TV, Fox News especially. They're spreading a lot of new laws that I never heard of or isn't consistent with the Constitution. As far as me, I started doing comedy full time, and so I didn't have time for my practice anymore. So
that's a very good reason. Also, I'm like, selfishly, you're like, I discovered I was very funny, which is true. You are very funny. And I feel like the world needs laughter, but we also need laws to be defended. Eliza, when you see what's going on in DC, what alarm bells are going off? Because it feels like this is not what people were expecting to happen so soon.
Well, I think there were some people who were definitely expecting it. I think a lot of people tried to sound the alarm bells in advance. We saw this coming, and people maybe didn't want to believe that this was the reality we were going to be facing. But, the way in which Trump is co-opting, the District of Columbia is trying to federalize forces and to arrest people, to end cashless bail, to do all these horrible things, to bring in the National Guard. And now he's going to be targeting other cities like the ones Paul and I live in, New York and Chicago. It's extremely troubling.
It is. And, I feel like there's a lot of conversation around the oath that people in the National Guard take, that not everyone has to comply with these illegal orders. Paul, as a former attorney, are you looking at this going like, somebody's got to figure out this oath thing before this craziness gets to Chicago? Or
there were a lot of people that were trying to post to get people who are in the Guard to get their thoughts on it, but even they're afraid to talk. I know a friend of mine posted something and say, "Isn't this," because he's in the National Guard, and people were privately DMing him saying, "Why are you doing this to us? You're putting us in an awkward situation because we really can't speak out because there's a conflict in terms of what getting an order and then also following your superior, right? So it's a little different. They have a little different conflict than people that are just trying to follow the law have. So it is going to be. I still don't believe he'll come to Chicago. I really don't think he will.
Well, we actually, and I want to get you,
Eliza's
but we saw what happened when he tried to have a rally in Chicago, and
Right.
I was in Chicago at the time, living there, and it's my hometown, and we actually pulled a clip of that. So I want to run that really quickly so we can take a look at how Chicago feels about Trump. We can come back to the clip after. We'll come back to the clip after. Oh, there we go.
We have breaking news tonight, so we'll go right to the details of this developing story.
This is Dean Reynolds in Chicago, where a political rally had to be canceled tonight as tensions gave way to violence. This was the scene tonight at the University of Illinois at Chicago Pavilion. It was supposed to have been a rally for Donald Trump. The arena filled with Trump supporters and a large number of Trump protesters. Tensions began to escalate. The rally was abruptly called off before the candidate ever took to the stage.
Mr. Trump just arrived in Chicago and after meeting with law enforcement has determined that for the safety of all the tens of thousands of people that have gathered in and around the arena, tonight's rally will be postponed until another day. Thank you very much for your attendance, and please go in peace.
That announcement touched off the worst of the unrest. Outside, the protests swelled. Crowds in the thousands took to the streets, and standoffs ensued between Chicago police and the crowds. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Chicago.
So Chicago does not play.
It never happened, right?
Do you remember that when it happened?
Yeah, and the thing is that's when people started to realize that it was his excuse was that it was for the safety, but I think he realized that most of the people at that rally, they somehow got tickets that were going to come to protest, and he did not want to look bad. And so, again, I just don't see how he can come here without looking bad, or I mean, how he can try to come here with the National Guard. I could be wrong, but I think we've got enough safety nets here. I think the governor is doing a great job of, citing the Illinois Constitution as to how and when they can come in, the feds can come in, and I don't see how he can do it. But the Supreme Court doesn't really seem to follow the law right now anyway. So
it is concerning. And Eliza, could you speak to the legality of these kind of orders and what National Guardsmen can do to push back against what they may be asked to do?
Well, I think the really interesting thing is that, when you were before mentioning the oath that people take when they join the National Guard, they take an oath which says, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, et cetera, et cetera. And that means their duty is not to the president, it's not to a governor, it's not to a political party, it is quite literally to the Constitution. And so it is their duty to not follow unlawful orders. And so we've talked about this a bit, but like, you know, when they need to protect the Constitution, they can't be enforcing illegal laws that target free speech, laws that target free assembly, laws that target immigrants. You know, this direct clash between orders and oath, I think it will be very interesting to see how it plays out. And I mean, this oath is not symbolic, like this is what their oath is. And so I hope that, you know, that they live up to that.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's a bit of peer pressure going on at this point for the folks in the National Guardsmen, because I mean, I've also heard similar things, Paul, from friends who have siblings in the National Guard. And I'm starting to wonder, is it this sort of like, if I don't do it, will you not do it? Like, will we do this together? Like, because they're not exactly like troops where they're always together all the time. They're only together when they're deployed or on the weekends during training. How does that play out? Do we even think that scenario could actually happen where they just decide, you know what, we're not doing this?
I think, as Eliza said, the thing about the oath, that's the fundamental issue why they're there. But there is parts of their training that require them to follow orders directly above them, right? So I guess it's really going to be up to the sergeants or whatever that are following the orders from, you know, the White House to kind of step up, because
that makes sense.
They're the ones that are in the position where they can do stuff or actually make a difference. Whereas if you're just a guardsman and you're following the orders of your commander, because that's the line of, I mean, how can you, there's a conflict that you're asking these 18 to 25-year-olds to decide what the oath is and to follow orders of your boss. You know, we've all been in positions where we're trying to follow what our bosses say, but of course the consequences of our decisions on whether to treat a Nordstrom customer is a little different than a dictatorship. So
Eliza, in addition to being an attorney, you're also a content creator. Paul, you're a comedian, you're a storyteller. So what I'm hearing is the story we need to tell is going directly to the people who actually have the power to make a difference. And maybe I'm not seeing enough of that. I'm not seeing that from the media. I'm not really seeing that from enough of our Democratic leaders. Eliza, I mean, like, I'm looking at what's going down in New York. I don't see Eric Adams, for example, speaking out about his sanctuaries. And New York's still a sanctuary city, if I'm...
I mean, that's correct. But unfortunately, you know, Eric Adams, given that Trump got his Department of Justice to dismiss a federal indictment against him, you know, is kind of now beholden to Trump. Thankfully, he's not going to be our mayor much longer. And I think that, you know, finally we're seeing our governor, Kathy Hochul, step up and say, okay, New York, you know, like, it's on, let's go. And hopefully we will see her step up. I really wish that, you know, she would show the leadership that the governor of Illinois and the governor of California are showing right now. But I think that, you know, New Yorkers are certainly we're not gonna shut up. We're not gonna sit this out. If they try and come to our city, you will see us in the streets as we have been.
Yeah, and I think that definitely feels that way. In a way, I think DC might have a lot of transplants and so don't feel as rooted in their city maybe as New Yorkers do or as Chicagoans do, where it's like a real claim to the city, like these are our streets, is what I'm maybe hopefully seeing. But you mentioned having a new mayor potentially in the future, and I think he had a scavenger hunt. I don't know if you saw that. Did that bring back sort of Amazing Race vibes for you? Were you like, I want to get out there in the streets?
I mean, it really did. It was, you know, with all the clues and thousands of people out in the streets, like really loving this city. it brought some joy in these dystopian hellscape times that we are living through.
Yeah, everything feels very terrible. And I'm glad that you're bringing laughter to people, Paul, because people do still need comedy. I'm often, when I'm at shows, I'm like, what are we doing here? We're supposed to be fighting fascism. But comedy also fights fascism.
I was just in Florida this past weekend doing shows, and it's kind of crazy how things have changed. You know, in the comedy world, when people bring up things, traditionally progressives were known to be to be the snowflakes in the crowds, where people would get upset when you brought up things. But lately, it's been MAGA world, and you know, I know Eliza, you probably see this with content too. You know, I explained defamation in one of my stories or on Instagram, and so many people were triggered. I just explained, you know, what it is, and people thought I was being political. So it was just kind of funny, because I'm like, well, AOC called him out as being a rapist, and this guy sues everyone. Why isn't he suing her? And people were like, because it's crazy, and you see that in the world, which I think is a good thing. I think Gavin Newsom is doing a great job of mimicking Trump. He's no longer using cap letters, so that's a positive. So yeah, I think it's good that as Eliza said, I think our governor in Illinois, and I love what Gavin Newsom's doing right now, and hopefully the governor in New York does the same.
Yeah, I often wonder if she feels a pressure that other governors don't necessarily feel, because she's a woman, and it feels like a woman can do the same thing. Like if came out and did all caps, if Kamala Harris came out and did all caps posts, it would be received much differently than handsome movie star Gavin Newsom, which I'm glad he's using his privilege in this way. But I do want to point that out, that not everybody can use that privilege if they don't have it.
100% true. Couldn't agree more. I think, you know, women are held to a different standard for sure. And especially women of color, you know, the things that people are able to say. But I do appreciate that Gavin and JB Pritzker, you know, people who have this straight white male privilege are saying, okay, then put me on the front lines. Let me take him on. And they're actually standing up and doing something.
Yeah. So in New York, you potentially have a young new mayor in Zoran Mamdani. It looks like he's still the front runner and will likely win. And I think what's interesting is both Chicago, that would mean Chicago and New York City would have young male men of color, progressives as their mayors, which is kind of actually mind-boggling, because it feels like hope amidst all of this dystopia. But at the same time, people are like, oh, it's one thing to win. It's another thing to, I'm trying hard to not break into Hamilton songs, because there's the one line, winning is easy, governing is harder, I think is what the line is. But what I believe Brandon Johnson in Chicago has seen crime rates go down. He's doing a good job. Paul, are people happy with him, or?
According to the statistics, yeah, I don't think people are necessarily very happy with him, but I think that the fact that Trump is starting to attack him, it makes people like kind of support him. You know, I wasn't a huge fan of his, but now everyone's like, wait, you can't criticize our mayor, we can. So it is kind of bringing the city together in a weird way. So,
well, I think that's true. Like with Gavin, I wasn't a fan of Gavin Newsom. He's attacking trans rights. I have a trans kid. I was like, why now of all times would you bring right-wing people onto your podcast? It seems insane. And I myself now, I'm like, Gavin, get him. I'm like, our bully's better than your bully, kind of vibe. Do you feel like so we have Chicago and New York, in a way, if city after city could almost band together and defend democracy in that way?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, listen, forever and for always, trans rights are human rights. I have a trans family member. Like, this is something that is not even remotely negotiable for me. And I'm so mad at the Trump administration for so many things, but making me root for Gavin Newsom might now be chief among them. I've never been a fan of his. I've criticized him plenty. But when it comes to what he's doing right now in this moment, it's about recognizing courage when it shows up, recognizing people who are holding the line, who are standing up and fighting back in a way that is necessary for this moment. So yeah, I'm also rooting for Gavin Newsom against all of my, my past hatred of him.
Yeah, no, it is tough, but it's like we can't always choose our fighters. Sometimes our fighters choose us. And I think as long as they're inspiring more and more people to come out and to pay attention, that's my fear, is that there are not enough regular people paying attention. I keep saying, as soon as I see someone on LinkedIn in the accounting department post like, hey, this is feeling a little bit fascisty, that's when I'll know that the average person is starting to get it. Paul, I feel like you have more of a connection with what the vibe is across the country, because you are in different towns, you're doing comedy shows. In general, I know you were just in Florida and you were talking about, how everyone's triggered and they're snowflakes now, but in general, what's the vibe? Are people, are they feeling like things are getting worse? Are they feeling like, oh, maybe I didn't vote for this?
I think that a little bit, you're seeing a little buyer's remorse. I do have friends who, or I should say colleagues, who voted for Trump, and I check in with them and I'm like, still interested in this. And I think there is some buyer's remorse, especially because the tariffs. I think that a lot of people, it is sad that that's the priority for a lot of people. They don't care about trans rights. They don't care about democracy if it helps them, So I think you're going to see, I think that's the thing that's going to piss people off. And of course, Epstein, which was something I would hear about nonstop from three of my friends who are, conspiracy theorists who did, vote for Trump. And I think you start losing those people, you start chipping away at that. And I think people start realizing that they were bamboozled. So whatever it takes, look, Gavin Newsom's popularity was at 23% before he started doing this. Now he's at 73 among Democrats.
Oh, wow.
That's huge. And so if whatever it takes to chip away at this nonsense, I think is a positive. And you said up top the difference between a dictator and dictatorship. Well, those are the people you need to siphon off from this grift. So
yeah. 100%. And using these this dream team that isn't necessarily a dream, but is doing the work, and recognizing we don't want perfect to be the enemy of the good right now, because we are in a fight. And it feels like the Trump administration is starting to realize that this is going to drag on longer than they have the energy to drag it on. And I say this because the executive order on the flag burning, it feels like they're testing, they're trying. They're like, let's see if we can go after a fundamental right. Let's see if we can twist this so we can make it seem like, oh, they hate America and they're burning flags. And I don't know, I feel like it's gonna backfire. What do you think, Eliza?
Well, so I was just talking about the American flag burning executive order with someone, and this executive order is so directly flies in the face of our constitutional rights. The Supreme Court has ruled on this. This is a First Amendment right. And so he's now trying to weaponize patriotism to muzzle dissent. And I thought it was so striking that a 20-year decorated combat veteran stood in Lafayette Park outside of the White House and literally lit a flag on fire and said, this is what I've fought for. This is what, these are the rights that I've fought for. I will not let this fascist president take these rights away from me or from any of you. And, risked his liberty, got arrested. Of course, they said it was for having an open flame in a park, because they're not actually going to try and test whether or not the president himself can make a law that bans flag burning. But his executive order says directs his Justice Department to go after people for disorderly conduct, for open flame, for this, for that, based on the fact that he is trying to muzzle dissent. And it is unacceptable. And, I hope we see more people like, like this veteran, Mr. Kerry, who was out there in front of the White House burning a flag.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they're trying to trigger people and they're trying to go after these fundamental rights because they're desperate. It smacks of desperation to me. And I can't help but think that, they've already gone after comedians in many ways. Stephen Colbert is, a comedian first and foremost. So, Paul, do you have the sense, or before it was, we're going to get canceled,
Yeah.
claiming they're going to get canceled for being racist. Well, I'm like, no accountability.
Right.
Do you feel like, as a comedian, you're on the front line of what can and can't be said right now?
Yeah, I think all those people that were arguing about free speech because they couldn't say the R word are all of a sudden like realizing what really was happening. And Mark Maron did a great job of this on his special, where he's and in interviews afterwards, where he's like, look, people in the marketplace did not want to hear certain things, certain jokes. And that's why you weren't being canceled. You were just not being as relevant as you could have been. Canceling, or I should say free speech, is when you go after someone in your administration like John Bolton and then go after him with a federal case, or try to get a federal case on him because he criticized you. And I think people are starting to realize that. So, look, the whole free speech thing, especially with the burning flag, I think more of that should happen so people can see what happens. And tell me if I'm wrong, Eliza, but the good news that I always tell people, what's the positive about this DOJ, is that they're so incompetent that nothing gets done. They got rid of people who were career DOJ, it wasn't even political, but they were good at their job. And I know for a fact that the people they're hiring now are just people that are probably going to be loyal to Trump, but also not qualified. So unfortunately, you can't fake it in the law world.
I mean, I completely agree that this DOJ is absolutely incompetent, and they're failing at their most basic jobs, applying the law fairly. You see them chasing political enemies. They're ignoring constitutional violations. It is beyond corrupt. I mean, it's sickening to watch, but also the incompetence means that they are ineffective. So for example, the man who threw a Subway sandwich, they tried to garner an indictment, and the news just dropped today that they were unable to secure an indictment. So they presented the case, right, and they couldn't get an indictment. I mean, there's literally a saying that you could indict a ham sandwich. Right. Couldn't indict this guy who threw a sandwich because everyone was like, well, that's not a felony. Like, are you kidding? How is that a felony? And so I think that, they've been really, really incompetent. And this DOJ is corrupt. I mean, they're all the worst things, right? Like, they're corrupt and also incompetent.
I almost want to see them go after Jack Smith because he will destroy them.
Oh, eviscerate.
It would be great to see them. I know that they're not going to, maybe they're going to try to subpoena these people, but I don't think the DOJ will go after them because they know they're out. I mean, they're just so incompetent. That's
the thing. They're so incompetent. They're making me feel like I could be a lawyer. So I'm wondering if they're so incompetent, they don't even realize that they don't have a case, like that they have to bring these cases in front of actual judges who have a respect for the law, who've had to go through law school, pass the bar at times when it was required to be a serious person to do these things. And so I'm guessing, regardless of how conservative a judge is right now, all of the people who got appointed by Trump, they're still looking at these DOJ attorneys like, fuck you bringing this case in front of the court, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, then we don't have a dictatorship yet because we still have courts.
Well,
that matter.
Yes and no. The problem is you have the appellate courts, and most of these most of these appellate courts, the 7th district is pretty fair, and there's a lot that are great. But the problem is the Supreme Court, right? You have, I feel like, a compromised Supreme Court right now. And so some stuff does pass muster. You saw it with the Garcia case. The first time it went through, it was 9-0. And then when they came back again after there were some confirmed errors made by the DOJ and the ICE that detained him, they were like, oh, well, we'll be like, it was like 6-3 on something that should have been 9-0. So I think ultimately what you said, Maya, about judges, they see this, they're like, we're not gonna hear this case, or we're gonna dismiss it. But then if it gets to the Supreme Court, some crazy stuff could happen.
Yeah, and I know the shadow docket, lots of things happen there, but my hope is that they just can't take on as many cases as they would want to be able to take on to effectively destroy our democracy. If they only take on, 80 or so cases a year, Eliza, unless maybe during Trump, now they'll take on 200. Please tell me no.
No, there's still a very small percentage of cases that will ever make their way to the Supreme Court. And I think, I would agree with Paul's assessment. Like, our Supreme Court is deeply compromised at this point. There are justices who have blatant conflicts of interest and have made rulings that strip away fundamental rights. It is deeply concerning. And I think that we have seen lower courts hold the line. We've seen judges in these lower courts really stepping up and holding the line and protecting rights. And so that's why it's more important than ever to continue to fight for judicial independence, to make sure that if judges are elected in the jurisdiction in which you live, that you are educated about those elections, that you vote, that you pay attention, because these judges who are these lower court judges are often the only ones who are holding the Constitution together and protecting us from, full-on authoritarianism.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I know when I look at my ballot and I have to get to the part of judges, I know back in the day I was just like, well, this seems like a nice name. This person seems lovely. And now I'm like researching, I'm cross-referencing, I'm Googling. I'm like, I need to know everything about this judge before I finish this ballot. And I think having parties where you get together with friends and family and maybe do that together is a way. And I think I still have hope because it's the people. We're the people. And it doesn't matter what they can try to squash dissent as much as they like. The fact is, we're in a better position now, I feel like, as Americans than my ancestors were in the 40s, 50s, 60s, in the sense that if they had given up, if they had said, we're not going to cross this bridge because we're afraid of the ramifications. And so I think we need to realize now that we just need more and more people willing to cross that bridge. That's my hope. And then you guys can defend us. And Paul, we're going to have to call you off the stage to defend people.
I do miss it. I do miss the law every once in a while when something crazy happens. And then I'm like, well, I'll just educate people on it online, and that's my break from comedy, I guess. But
well, perfect. I was like, we're gonna need you. We might assemble the dream team yet. So, guys, thank you so much for joining Punching Up tonight. I hope that I feel hopeful based on what you've told me. I'm gonna maintain optimism all the way to the very end, and I hope the end means, like the thing on the hand grows and. Whatever that is. So thanks for coming on Punching Up. You guys are, of course, welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Great chatting with both of you.
Bye. I think we're just waiting for the stream to cut. I know we've got CJ in the back with a lagging internet, so I will just go ahead. I'll do my close with you guys still here. But I did want to say I read The Scheme. I just finished reading The Scheme by Sheldon Whitehouse about the court capture and the court capture of the Supreme Court. And I think it's required reading. It should be required reading for anybody who is trying to understand exactly how and when our courts, the process of our courts being captured happened. It is eye-opening and also a little disheartening that it was able to happen and began really like in the 60s and 70s. So that's homework for everybody. We've just given you a lot of information, and now you're going to have to go seek out this information on your own. Go pick up the book, read it, take notes, and report back. And everybody enjoy your evening. Eliza, I know you have a tennis match to get to, so enjoy. All right. Bye.
Great chatting. Talk soon. Bye.
Talk soon. Bye. If you have not read The Scheme, it's Sheldon Whitehouse's book about the court capture and the right-wing plan, including working together with corporations and billionaires to take over the Supreme Court to be able to push through laws that were unpopular and continue to be unpopular with Americans. And so it's their way of bypassing the need to make legislation and basically using the court, weaponizing the court to be able to pass bullshit laws that people won't stand for, knowing that Supreme Court justices are Supreme Court justices for life. So please check out the book. It's a great read. It's called The Scheme. And please take care of yourselves because it is insane right now in the States, and people are suffering the consequences of a vote. Elections have consequences. And if we have the chance to vote again, which I believe we will, please vote with that in mind and make sure to check your voter registration wherever you are. Thank you for watching Punching Up. I will see you next week.